He would become the most celebrated American architect of his time, arguably the most celebrated American architect of all time. But in the waning years of the 19th century, Frank Lloyd Wright was just a precocious young man setting out on his own, designing houses in the burgeoning suburbs of Chicago. He assured potential clients he was at their service. "There should be as many types of homes as there are types of people," he promised, "for it is the individuality of the occupants that should give character and color to a building." But looking back at the hundreds of houses that Wright designed over his 7-decade career, it is the consistency of the architect's vision that stands out. So, we must ask, is great architecture the expression of individual genius, or the product of a complex negotiation between an inspired architect and an engaged client? One answer can be found in the acre-and-a-half site before you. To see this complex of buildings and gardens simply as one star in Wright's extraordinary constellation of work misses something essential: the story of the man who made it happen, his family, and his city. It's the story of Frank Lloyd Wright's genius in service to, and sometimes in spite of, his remarkable client, Darwin D. Martin of Buffalo, New York. Darwin Martin was born on a farm in upstate New York in 1865, the youngest of 5 children. His idyllic childhood was cut short. At age 6, his mother died suddenly, changing his life forever. His father arranged to marry a widow with 4 small children of her own and join them on her farm in Nebraska. He separated his children, leaving the 3 oldest with relatives in New York, and headed west with Darwin and his brother in tow. The sickly young boy never took to his new home, never stopped longing for his scattered family. When his older brother offered him the chance to come back east, he jumped at the opportunity. At the tender age of 12, Darwin Martin began his career as a door-to-door soap slinger in New York City for the Larkin Soap Company. And for the next 10 years, home was a shared room in a lonely boarding house in New York, Boston, or Buffalo. But his drive, exceptional ambition, and an aptitude for numbers soon paid off. The company's founder, John Larkin, noticed the young boy, summoned him to the company's headquarters in Buffalo, and installed him as an apprentice accountant. And for the rest of his working life, Larkin became his home. By the dawn of the new century, Martin had made his first million. At age 41, he was one of the highest-paid executives in the United States. He had come from nothing to achieve great wealth and stature. But he was plagued by a deep insecurity born of his tumultuous childhood. "I never ceased mourning of a broken home," he wrote. "The sweetest song on earth is Home, Sweet Home." As he climbed through the ranks of the Larkin Company, Darwin Martin lived quietly with his small family in a Queen Anne-style home on Summit Avenue. But his adopted city was anything but quiet. Buffalo was booming, and the Larkin Soap Company boomed along with it. John Larkin and Darwin Martin presided over the construction of millions of square feet of new factory and warehouse space. And with success came the desire for something more symbolic, a building that would stand as a monument to their growing stature in the ranks of American business. John Larkin favored Chicago's Louis Sullivan to design it, the premier commercial architect of his day. On advice from close friends, Darwin Martin suggested a more radical choice, a young Midwesterner causing a stir in Chicago. Born in Wisconsin in 1867, 2 years after Martin, Frank Lloyd Wright moved east to Chicago at age 19, eventually landing a position as a draftsman in the architectural office of Adler and Sullivan. In less than 5 years, he was second only to Louis Sullivan himself, but he parted ways with his mentor and lit out on his own. He possessed, by all accounts, a riveting personality, a charming manner, and, despite his youth, an ability to convince his clients to take enormous risks, both aesthetic and financial. But the limited scale and budgets of his domestic projects offered only a narrow field on which to play out his theories of modern architecture. He boldly envisioned a wholesale break from his contemporaries, a new, entirely modern American architecture, freed from convention and historical reference. Wright spoke of breaking the box, escaping the constraints of traditional rooms and walls, of letting spaces flow from one to the next, and in keeping with the radical art of the new century, rethinking definitions of time and space. So, when Darwin D. Martin, executive of the Larkin Soap Company, came calling about a major commercial building in the booming city of Buffalo and a domestic compound underwritten by a millionaire's checkbook, Wright saw the perfect opportunity and seized it. It was the start of a friendship that would last for the next 30 years. Darwin Martin led Frank Lloyd Wright to the two most important commissions of his early career: the Larkin Administration Building, Wright's first major commercial project, and the Martin House Complex, both destined to join the ranks of the architect's masterworks. Throughout the process, the architect and the executive worked together closely, often corresponding daily. While Martin was often irked by his architect's seeming disregard for budgets or design direction, he was clearly in awe of Wright's vision, imagination, and even spirituality. True to his Unitarian roots, a religion marked by a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, Wright spoke of his work in terms that exceeded function, structure, and material. And perhaps playing to his client, he exalted the home as an essential place of renewal, solace, and peace. Wright's rhetoric perfectly matched Martin's existential longing. Wright offered architecture as recuperation, the restoration of Martin's fragmented childhood in brick and mortar, glass and tile. In turn, Martin offered the space and the budget to design, to build, to realize his dream of a new architecture. When the Martin House complex was finally completed, it was spectacular. Buffalo had never seen anything like it. One reporter called it the Jules Verne House and likened it to a Chinese puzzle. Combining the structural innovations of Sullivan's steel-frame commercial towers with a keen sense of domestic material and detail, Wright achieved an unprecedented level of spatial openness, tempered by a warm human scale. And while the precise grid of piers and beams and meticulous detailing may have appealed to his fastidious client's sense of order, it is the sense of unity that may have truly represented Martin's deepest desire. The design is a diagram of disparate parts, diverse but harmonious, a place where indelible bonds are woven as elements cross and interlock. A family, perhaps. Martin's aching, unrealized dream of uniting his fractured past in one all-encompassing, all-enveloping complex lives on in Wright's intricately defined plan. Frank Lloyd Wright would go on to design over 1,000 buildings and construct almost 500 of them, including some of the most emblematic of American architecture. The Martin House complex is one of the finest. It represents the young Frank Lloyd Wright at his audacious best, Darwin Martin as the model of the engaged patron, Buffalo at the height of its historic power, and stands as one of the great aesthetic achievements of American architecture.